Um, so I want to start today with a question that sounds really simple, but I have a feeling it's going to completely mess with my head.
Oh, I love those. Let's hear it.
Right. So for everyone listening, do you think the future is something that happens to you, or is it something you make?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it?
See, I feel like most people today, myself included, obviously, would say we make it. We have 5-year plans and we have 401ks.
Right.
Cities have zoning committees. We treat the future like like a DIY project,
Right.
basically.
Yeah, we totally do.
But I was reading through the research for today. Specifically, we were doing a deep dive into Bruno Carvalho's work on the invention of the future. And his argument suggests this whole mindset is actually new.
Extremely new. And
No.
honestly, it's a bit of a weird invention if you look at the grand timeline of human history.
Weird how? Like, we just didn't plan things.
Well, because for thousands of years, the future wasn't a blank page for us to draw on. It was already written. It was the domain of the divine.
Oh, I see. Like fate.
Exactly. You had fate, providence, the will of God. You didn't plan the future. You endured it. Or you prayed about it.
So if a storm hits, it's not just a low pressure system, it's God having a really bad day.
Precisely. And if you win a battle, it's not because of your brilliant strategy. It's that fate smiled on you.
Right.
The idea that human beings could just grab the steering wheel of time and drive it somewhere specific, that is a radical, relatively recent shift.
And that's exactly what we're unpacking today on this deep dive, how
Yeah.
we stopped waiting for the end times and started actually building the future.
Yeah.
And the crazy part of this research is that this shift didn't start in some quiet philosopher's study. It started in the mud and the rubble of cities.
It really is a tale of 3 cities.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look at a catastrophic disaster in Lisbon, a dream in Paris, and a massive real estate scheme in New York.
I love that. Let's start with the disaster then, because apparently before you can invent the future, you have to completely destroy the past. Take us to Lisbon in 1755.
All right, so it's November 1st, All Saints' Day. And this is a super crucial detail for what happens next.
Because literally everyone is in church.
Everyone. It's 9:40 in the morning. The cathedrals are packed to the brim. Candles are lit everywhere. Incense is burning. Lisbon is one of the richest, most pious cities in Europe at this time. And then
The floor drops out.
the floor completely drops out.
The descriptions in the source material are just terrifying. We're talking about an earthquake that seismologists today estimate was an 8.5 or maybe even a 9.0.
It was cataclysmic.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't just the shaking that destroyed the city.
Right, because of the candles.
Exactly, because it was All Saints' Day. All those candles toppled over into the wooden pews and ignited massive fires.
Wow.
And then, as if that wasn't enough, the sea receded and came rushing back as a massive tsunami, swallowing the entire harbor.
It's the absolute trifecta of doom. You have earth, fire, and water just wiping out the city.
And you really have to imagine the psychological impact here. If you are a person in 1755, standing in the ruins of a holy city on a holy day,
Yeah.
seeing these massive stone churches collapse and crush the faithful, while, ironically, the brothels and the chaotic outskirts were largely spared.
Oh, man.
What is your conclusion going to be?
I mean, I'd probably think we made someone upstairs very, very angry.
That was the immediate consensus: divine punishment.
Sure.
The Jesuits, led by a very intense figure named Gabriel Malagrida, started preaching that this was God's direct wrath. It was a sign of the end times.
And his message was basically, don't rebuild, just repent.
Exactly. Don't touch the rubble. Pray.
So the city is actively burning, thousands of people are dying, and the authorities are essentially saying, well, this is it, folks, wrap it up.
Except for one guy, the Marquis of Pombal. He's the king's right hand, but he's very much a man of the Enlightenment.
Right.
He steps into this apocalypse, and when people ask him what to do, he doesn't start praying. He supposedly utters this famous line, "Bury the dead and feed the living."
Bury the dead and feed the living. That is such a cold, intensely practical line. It sounds like something a general would bark out in a war zone, not a politician.
It's brilliant, though, because it's the moment the switch flips. It marks the definitive shift from religious fatalism to secular management.
He's managing a crisis, not a spiritual judgment.
Exactly. Pombal treats the earthquake as a logistical problem. He locks down the city to stop looting. He organizes sanitation to prevent plague. And then he does something even more radical.
He calls in the engineers.
He calls the engineers.
And this is where the invention of the future really kicks in for me. Because they had a choice, right? They could have just put the stones back exactly where they were.
They could have. Manuel de Maya, who was the chief engineer, actually gave Pombal 5 different options for how to proceed.
Okay.
Option 1 was just rebuild it as it was. Option 5 was to abandon Lisbon entirely and move the capital to a different city.
And they went with option 4, right?
Right. Option 4 was raise the center and start over from scratch.
So they completely flattened what was left of the old city.
Completely. Old Lisbon was this medieval maze of winding streets, dead ends, very organic, chaotic growth. Pombal and his team replaced it with what they called the Baika plan,
Which was a grid.
a strict, rational grid, wide avenues, perfect 90-degree angles.
Why straight lines, though? Was it just for aesthetics? Like, they wanted it to look neat?
It was about control. A straight line is rational, it's legible, you can see all the way down it.
You can march troops down it if there's a riot.
Yes, exactly. But they also built new technology directly into the grid. They invented something called the gaiola, which translates to birdcage.
I saw that in the notes. It's like an anti-seismic skeleton, right?
Spot on. It was a flexible wooden frame built inside the masonry walls of the new buildings. So the idea was if the earth shakes again, the building sways, but it doesn't crumble.
So they're literally engineering a physical defense against God's wrath.
Or against nature. And that distinction is the whole ballgame. They even changed the architecture of the churches to reflect this new hierarchy. In the old city, churches towered over everything else. They were the focal point of the skyline. And Pombal's new grid, they had to be the exact same height as the residential buildings.
Oh, wow. So they stripped them of their towers.
They completely demoted the church, they subordinated it to the street, and by extension, to the secular state.
They even renamed the main central square. The source material notes it used to be called the Palace Grounds, and they renamed it Commerce Square.
Commerce Square.
That is a not-so-subtle message to the public. Welcome to the future. We trade things here now. God is taking a backseat.
Right. But you can't just build a new secular city and expect everyone to instantly get on board. Remember Malagrida, the end times preacher.
The guy shouting about sin in the rubble, did he just give up?
He absolutely did not stop shouting. And Pombal realized something crucial here. You cannot invent a human future if the population is completely convinced God is about to end the world.
The two ideas just cannot coexist.
They cancel each other out. So what did he do?
He had Malagrida arrested.
He had him arrested, condemned for heresy, and publicly burned at the stake.
Wow. That is just so extreme.
It is. It's the dark irony of the Enlightenment. To secure the right to plan the future, to assert that we are in charge and not the heavens, they used the brutal, archaic methods of the Inquisition to silence the prophet.
So Lisbon is step one. We stop waiting for the end of the world, and we start actively managing the disaster. But managing a disaster isn't really the same as dreaming of a better world, is it?
No, it's not. For that, we have to travel a little further north and a few years forward, to Paris.
Okay.
And we need to look at a book that came out in 1771 called The Year 2440.
2440, that's a very specific date.
It is. The book was written by Louis-Sébastien Mercier, and it's incredibly significant because before this book, if you wrote a story about a utopia, a perfect society, where did you put it?
Usually on an island somewhere, right? Or some hidden valley. Somewhere far away in space.
Exactly. Thomas More's original utopia is an island. It exists right now, just somewhere else geographically. Mercier did something revolutionary. He put his utopia in Paris, but far away in time.
He essentially invented the futuristic science fiction novel.
He really did. The protagonist falls asleep and wakes up 700 years later, and he walks around Paris. But it's not the dirty, chaotic, disease-ridden Paris of the 1700s.
Let me guess, it has straight lines.
Yes, it's a city of light, reason, and completely straight lines, just like Lisbon.
It's amazing how that aesthetic became the standard for progress.
And Mercier imagined that the Louvre was a center for the public arts, not a palace for royalty. He imagined Versailles was just in ruins, a monument to the foolish vanity of kings.
So it was this purely secular, rational dream for humanity.
Yes.
But there's a catch with Mercier's vision, isn't there? The authors in our research point out that his version of the future was, well, kind of boring.
It was entirely static. This is what we call the static utopia. Mercier thought, okay, we have these brilliant Enlightenment values. Once we build the perfect city based on these exact values, history will basically stop.
Stop. Like nothing happens anymore.
Right. Everyone will be perfectly happy, everything will be perfectly orderly, and nothing fundamental will ever need to change again.
So it's like they thought they could literally solve the puzzle of human existence. And once the puzzle is solved, you don't keep moving the pieces around, you just look at it.
That's a great way to put it. It's a finished future. But while Mercier was sitting around dreaming of this perfect, frozen perfection in Paris, across the Atlantic, a bunch of surveyors were laying the groundwork for a future that would never, ever sit still.
New York City.
Specifically, the Commissioner's Plan of 1811.
I really love this part of the story because New York in 1800 is not the New York you and I picture today. It's basically a mud puddle compared to London or Paris at the time.
It's just a scrappy little port town of maybe 60,000 people huddled on the very southern tip of Manhattan. But the ambition of these planners was just off the charts.
Yeah.
The state appoints a commission to map out the streets for the entire island, all the way up north to 155th Street.
Which at the time is miles and miles of absolutely nothing. It's forests, it's rocky hills, streams, scattered farms. There are virtually no people living up there.
It was an absurd gamble. But look at how they planned it. When L'Enfant designed Washington, D.C., he used these big, beautiful, Baroque diagonal avenues to show off imperial power and grandeur.
And Lisbon was designed to show the absolute authority of the state over the church.
Exactly. But New York, the commissioners basically said, we don't care about beauty or power. We care about economy.
There's a direct quote from the commissioners in the sources where they admit they considered drawing circles and ovals, but rejected them because, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, straight-sided and right-angled houses are the most cheap to build.
Right. Convenience and utility. That was their only religion. But the 1811 grid did something much more profound than just make building houses cheap. It completely commodified space.
Break that down for us. Commodified how exactly?
Think about it this way. If you have a winding river or a weird rocky hill, every single plot of land is unique.
Okay.
It's hard to value. It's really hard to sell to someone who hasn't seen it in person. But if you take a giant ruler and slice the entire island into identical 200 by 800 foot blocks.
You turn the land into a giant spreadsheet.
You turn land into chips, like gambling chips. It made real estate incredibly liquid.
Wow.
You could be sitting in a coffee house in London and buy Block 45, Lot 12 without ever seeing it because you knew exactly what it was. It was a rectangle. They abstracted the physical world into a ledger.
It honestly reminds me of NFTs or crypto tokens today. You don't need to actually see the physical thing. You just own the designated slot on the blockchain.
That is a brilliant analogy. The 1811 grid was essentially the original blockchain for real estate. It didn't care about topography at all. They flattened entire hills. They filled in deep ponds. The grid was supreme.
And unlike Lisbon, they didn't just minimize the church, they totally ignored it. Looking at the original 1811 map, there are no grand cathedral squares.
Barely any public spaces at all. There's a designated spot for a reservoir and maybe a scientific observatory, but no dedicated space for God. Free market was the God of New York.
And this leads right into that core concept from the book Endless Becoming. Lisbon and Mercier wanted a finished, completed city. New York created a machine for constant, endless change.
Think of the New York grid like a massive bookshelf. The structure, the shelves themselves, is completely rigid. That's the street plan. But the books on the shelves, the actual buildings, can be swapped out instantly.
Right, you take a small book out, you jam a much bigger one in its place.
Exactly. The source material uses the Waldorf Astoria site as a perfect example of this. In just 1 century, that single specific plot of land hosted a farm, then a wealthy mansion, then the massive hotel, and finally the Empire State Building.
That is the exact opposite of Mercier's static utopia. That is aggressive, relentless churning.
It's a pure flex. Rem Koolhaas famously called the New York grid the most courageous act of prediction in Western civilization.
Not because they knew it was coming, right?
Right. They had no clue about steel skyscrapers or elevators or subways. But because they built a framework that was so robust, it could handle literally anything. It was a machine designed to process the unknown.
But this is where I want to push back a bit, or at least bring in the critical nuance the book offers. We're talking about flux and freedom and this exciting change. But there is a much darker side to this whole Atlantic economy. This wasn't just happening in a happy vacuum.
No, absolutely not. You cannot talk about the rapid rise of New York or the rebuilding of Lisbon without talking about what was actually fueling the global economy at that time. Yes. Cotton, sugar, coffee. The massive wealth that built these rational grids was generated by enslaved human labor. And the authors make a really deep, uncomfortable connection between the order of the grid and the order of the plantation.
How so? Because on the surface, the city feels like freedom in motion, and the plantation is obviously the horrific opposite of that.
Think about the core logic of the planner. The planner desperately wants fixity. They want to control the future.
Right.
On a plantation, that control is absolute. If you are an enslaved person, your future is entirely stolen. It is fixed by the master. You jerk, your children work until you die. It is a closed, inescapable loop of time.
So the plantation is like the ultimate static utopia for the owner, but an absolute dystopia for the worker.
Correct. But here's the historical paradox. The cities, which were funded by this brutal system, actually ended up breaking that control. The city created flux.
Frederick Douglass had a really profound quote about this in the reading, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He observed this firsthand. He said, a city slave is almost a free man, compared with a slave on the plantation.
Why is that? What actually makes the city fundamentally different?
Anonymity and complexity.
Yeah.
In the city, you have back alleys. You have massive crowds. You can meet new people, hear news from ships, learn to read in secret.
The grid might be rigid on paper, but life down inside the grid is incredibly messy. It's full of chance encounters.
It's the video game versus the movie.
Oh, I like that.
Think about it. The plantation is a movie.
Yeah.
The script is written. You can't change the ending. The city is an open-world video game. The developers built the map, the grid, but they absolutely cannot control what the players actually do inside it.
That is the perfect way to describe the tension of modern urban life. And it seems like the literature of the time picked up on this way before the city planners did. Have you ever heard of the city mystery genre?
The Mysteries of Paris. The Mysteries of New York.
Yeah, these were huge bestsellers in the 19th century, and the whole plot engine of these books was always identity and chance. Like, who is that person in the fog? The beggar on the corner might actually be a prince in disguise. The wealthy gentleman might be a master thief.
So while the planners were sitting in their offices looking at their map, saying, look at this perfect, predictable order, the novelists were saying, actually, down here on the street, it's total chaos.
It's what the French call le hasard, chance, risk. And that is what the modern future really turned out to be. It wasn't the orderly, static dream of Mercier where nothing ever changes. It was the risky, boom and bust, creative destruction of New York.
So we invented the future. We went from this mindset of the end of the world is coming any day now to the world is endless. We stopped fearing God's wrath and started trusting in our own engineering.
We gained agency. We gained the cultural ability to say, I can change my life, or we can rebuild this entire city. That is a really powerful, beautiful thing.
But we also lost something fundamental in that transition. We lost the feeling of stability. We live in a world of constant anxiety now because of it.
Oh, for sure. Will the stock market crash? Will my job even exist in 5 years with AI? Will the climate hold up?
Speaking of the climate, there's one final figure from the research we really have to mention, Svante Arrhenius.
The Swedish scientist, right?
Yes, in the 1890s, right as this massive urban coal-powered machine is peaking, he calculates something terrifying. He realizes that burning all this coal, which is the fuel of the modern city, is eventually going to warm the entire planet.
So he actually predicted global warming back in 1896.
He did. But, and this just shows you how deeply ingrained the invention of the future mindset was by then, he actually thought it was great.
Wait, he thought global warming was a good thing.
He predicted a warmer sky that would help grow more crops and feed the world. And crucially, he thought it would take like 3,000 years to happen.
He thought he had all the time in the world. He thought the future was this long, slow, manageable curve.
Exactly. He completely failed to account for the exponential speed of the machine we built. He didn't account for the flux. And now, ironically, we are right back where we started in Lisbon.
We are looking at climate models today that look an awful lot like those old religious prophecies of doom. We are actively fearing the end times again. It's come full circle. We tried to engineer our way out of nature, and we just engineered ourselves right back into a corner.
But I guess the core lesson of Lisbon and New York isn't that we're just totally doomed. It's that the future is never what the planners think it will be. It's not a straight line on a map. It's a constant negotiation between the rigid plan and the messy people living inside it.
That's very true.
So let's wrap this up with a thought for everyone listening right now. We started this deep dive by asking you if the future is something that happens to you or something you make.
And we've seen that for the last 200 years, we've been living in a grid specifically designed to turn time and space into money.
So the provocative question is this. When you look at your life today, your digital calendar, your career path, the literal city you live in, are you just inhabiting the box that 19th century capitalism built for you? Are you just another interchangeable book on their shelf?
Or are you brave enough to accept the flux, to embrace the chance, the risk, and draw a line that isn't already on the map? Are you the planner or are you the player? Definitely something to think about while you're sitting stuck in traffic on the grid today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
See you next time.